Well, it's time to reveal some things. It's time to talk about some things. And I am nervous about this episode. I'm nervous. I'm never nervous about making an episode, but this one is personal. This has to do with my destiny. This has to do with my purpose. And it's a lot overwhelming for me. Like, this is affecting me more than I thought. You know, we went to a festival here in Hopkinsville over the weekend. For some reason, we're like, let's go. There was also some pain body around it. Like, there was some energy that didn't want us to go. It was very strange. And, but something like happened, and we went, like, Merrick and I had a little argument, and, it had to do with him. It's whenever we have an argument, it's usually due to something with his family. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I have to be honest with people. So, you know, we went to a park bench and we sat down and we talked it out. And then we went back to the festival. And then there was this booth for the city of Hopkinsville, the tourism place. And for the longest time, they downplayed Edgar Cayce, and they downplayed the alien invasion that happened here in the 50s. They were downplaying all this stuff, but something must have shifted. Merrick and I thought we were in a new timeline because they had brochures, they had little aliens set up, and it was like, okay, now might be the time. Now might be the time to talk about this, both for the city of Hopkinsville and for our practice of concrete shamanism. Maybe we talk about this now. And they had brochures and other types of things. And there's also a paranormal festival coming up here called Goblin Con, you know. And I'm like, well, I'm glad that the city of Hopkinsville has recognized that they have something special going on. And I'm going to talk about my connections to Edgar Cayce today. They're a little weird. They're a little strange. I've downplayed them. Other people have downplayed them. But I'm going to need your help here in investigating this, because I've purposely stayed away from this topic. I have purposely not researched anything much about Edgar Cayce at all. It was too terrifying for me. It was too much. It was like, oh God, no. It's very disturbing for me for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need your help to help me connect some dots, because for a lot of this, I'm blocked to it. I'm blocked because it is overwhelming. And today I'm going to talk to you about why it's overwhelming on this episode of the Shaman Patrick Show, probably the most personal episode I've ever done. So let's go.
He was once a storm in human form, shot, tongue, cold, so hard, worn and torn, living like a ghost who missed his grave till the spirit sang out and called him brave. He got rewired by the great unknown, heard the call like a dial tone to the bone. So pull up a chair, enjoy the glow. This is the Shaman Patrick Show.
I think the best way to start this episode is to talk about who Edgar Cayce was, for those that don't know, because there are many who don't know who Edgar Cayce was. So I'm going to read from this brochure. I'm also going to put a picture up on the screen from, if you Google Edgar Cayce, this is what you're going to get. A picture of him older and a picture of him younger. And, oh, by the way, I'm not the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. I've already talked to the Edgar Cayce Association of Research Enlightenment. I'm not claiming that, but you will see in this presentation how my connection to this is kind of weird and strange. All right, so Edgar Cayce is considered by many to be the greatest psychic of the 20th century. Born in Christian County on March 18th, 1877, he lived a remarkable life dedicated to helping others. He died on January 3rd, 1945 in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and is buried in Riverside Cemetery in Hopkinsville. Edgar Cayce has been called the sleeping prophet, the father of holistic medicine, and the founder of the New Age movement. Now, that's kind of a big deal, isn't it? That the New Age movement was founded in the city in which I was raised and live in currently. This was like Sedona before Sedona. All right, so while in a self-induced trance, Cayce performed readings for people who were seeking help for their physical health, their emotional troubles, and their personal lives and business. Cayce's first reading was performed in Hopkinsville in 1901. Over the next 4 decades, he gave more than 14,300 readings. Cayce's legacy lives on in Hopkinsville, in Virginia Beach, and in the lives of those who study and practice the ideas presented through his work. There's also a cell phone tour that you can take, and you can go to these locations in Hopkinsville and dial a cell phone number. The first thing that I thought was curious is that in 1998, 99, I wrote a novel called The Promise of Eden. This novel was about New Harmony, Indiana, and it also had aliens in it as well. But in that novel, the labyrinth figured prominently in New Harmony and in this alien race that was in the novel. So I was shocked to discover that there was a labyrinth on the Edgar Cayce cell phone tour, and it's stop number 11, the labyrinth. And so, well, I called the number to see what it was, and it said basically, walk this labyrinth and meditate and receive a message from your God, which is a weird way of putting it. And I just thought that was a very strange coincidences. One of the many weird coincidences that I have with Edgar Cayce. So I'm going to tell you, I never thought much about me being from Hopkinsville, Kentucky. When I moved to Chicago in 2010, it was to study comedy. It was not to have a spiritual awakening. It was not to do anything other than get away from my family. That's primarily the main reason that I wanted to move to Chicago, to get as far away from my family, to be in a place where I could be gay without experiencing a lot of homophobia, and study comedy and live the rest of my life, maybe as a stand-up comedian. That was the reason I moved to Chicago. But I did experience a lot of suffering there. And I eventually ended up having a near-death experience there. And I'm going to tell you what started making me question things. And I went to Target in a fugue state. I will call it a fugue state. And I was just buying things from the dollar aisle. This was probably in 2013. Well, it was in 2013. And I bought a bunch of children's flashcards. When I got back to my apartment, I was dumping a bunch of stuff onto the floor. And I realized that the children's flashcards that were on the ground, I was getting messages from. And so I like, these are like tarot cards. And then I also received something called a soul key. And it was what words actually meant. I don't have that soul key anymore. I sent it to a friend of mine. I could reach out to my friend and see if he has it in his email or messages. He might. But, some of the things that I remember is that pizza equals a spiritual lesson. Frog equals friends. And to uptick everything to a positive, that there was no negative, that everything was a positive. Now, granted, before having my near-death experience, I was an atheist. I thought God was a fantasy. I was raised in Christian County where Edgar Cayce grew up. And I just thought Christianity was bullshit. And I had conflated Christianity with God. I didn't know that there was a God outside of it all, outside of all religions. I didn't know that. But I would soon discover that there was a God, independent of religion. In fact, usually independent of religion. So, having this experience, I was trying to find help. You know, I've talked about this before. I went to Buddhists, I went to lots of different places to try to figure out what was going on with me, because I really didn't know. I called my priest, who is a cousin. But interestingly enough, all along, my family was shutting it down. They were interfering in me being able to get help with this. You know, for a while, I thought it was like a conspiracy theory, but now it's just, my father was an abusive alcoholic. He didn't want me talking to anybody else lest I reveal just how abusive and alcoholic he was. So I don't think it was like a dark force. Well, it could have been a dark force or whatever, but you know, my parents would downplay my talents constantly as if they were almost jealous of them. And after I published that first novel, they were proud on the surface, but man, they really did try to sabotage every little thing I did from there on out. I loved my family. I loved my parents. But now that they're gone, I'm actually starting to succeed at things that I want to succeed at. So there you go. But I bring that up because I was forced to reach out to other people for help. You know, you should be able to rely on your family when you're going through a tough time. You should, unless you have alcoholic parents or narcissistic parents. If you're going through a rough time with that kind of stuff, they're like, good. Wow. Yes. So not being able to reach out to family, I reached out to the Association of Research and Enlightenment, Edgar Cayce's Association of Research and Enlightenment. And I told them exactly what was going on with me. And I remember getting confirmation of some things. I told them I was from Hopkinsville, and I gave them my email address and my phone number. And next thing I know, I'm being contacted by people. I was put in touch with the Arcturian Council here on Earth. I'm going to say some things in this that are going to sound strange to just ordinary everyday people. But I got put in touch with the Arcturian Council. They declined to speak with me. Okay, they declined to speak with me. Edgar Cayce and the Arcturians are linked. Why did they decline to speak to me? I don't know. A lot of times I think that I'm going to tell you what the Edgar Cayce Association and Research and Enlightenment told me. They said, you're just going to have to do your own thing. Because I was like, what do I do? Like, do I pick up the work of Edgar Cayce? Like this, I'm from Hopkinsville and I had this awakening. And what does it mean? Like, what does it all mean? Am I supposed to join an Edgar Cayce group? And what am I supposed to do? And I remember her telling me, you're just supposed to do your own thing now. And I was like, okay, all right. I was like, well, how do I do that? I don't know what to do. Is there a manual? Because I've had this thing happen. Can I get some guidance, please? I actually did get some guidance, but let's talk about the Edgar Cayce Arcturian connection here. Edgar Cayce viewed the Arcturians associated with the star Arcturus as the most advanced spiritual civilization in the universe and a gateway to higher realms. While not scientifically verified, this concept is a foundational element of many New Age belief systems and channeled teachings, which describe Arcturians as advanced beings who offer guidance and healing to humanity to help raise Earth's consciousness. So it goes on to say, Cayce referred to Arcturus as a significant celestial body and a gateway to higher levels of consciousness. He saw the Arcturians as the most advanced civilization in the universe, serving as a prototype for Earth's future spiritual progress. And Cayce's readings described souls journeying to different spheres, including Arcturus, as part of their spiritual evolution. Now, this was even before I contacted Edgar Cayce's association, is I was having alien experiences already. I was already being presented with the Arcturians even before I came across Edgar Cayce's concept of the Arcturians. And I think Edgar claimed to be in contact with Arcturians. And I'm like, okay, well, there's another thing. Like I felt like I was in contact with the Arcturians as well. So the things were starting to line up a little bit. But even then, it was still kind of overwhelming. Like, that's a big coincidence, you know, to have this kind of awakening, which is kind of a rare thing to have such an awakening such as I had. It is. It's not so rare that other people don't have it. It's just that to be able to talk to other people who really understood or knew what I was going through, it wasn't going to be easy to find. I mean, I actively looked for people to help. Ultimately, I made video blog entries about it and started talking about it to other people. Eventually, it became clear to people who knew their shit that I was becoming a shaman. And even that was overwhelming. Like, and I'll repeat some things here that you've heard in other episodes, but it was like realizing that you were gay. Like, okay, well, how am I supposed to live the rest of my life? I mean, am I going to have to live in a hut? Am I going to have to leave society? Am I going to be allowed to sleep in a bed? What does this even mean? I don't know what it means. Trying to find an elder and mentors in this stuff is a very difficult thing to do. It is. I would say that when I would bring it up with people, those were like, I'm going to say this. I think it was a projection, because some people thought I was trying to clout chase. And I'm like, well, if I was trying to clout chase, I would be all about this Edgar Cayce stuff. I've actually tried to downplay it for as long as I could. It's too overwhelming. It was just too overwhelming. Some people were like, well, yeah, that ain't no big deal. That ain't no big deal. And at times I was willing to say, yeah, it's not a big deal. But lately it's just becoming like, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. But so I got emails from people, and I didn't really know what to ask or what to do. I didn't really know what to do. And most of those, all those emails I think are deleted, but I saved snippets of some of them. And this is a snippet of an email I got, and it said, I will remain available to you if you feel I can be of help. You mentioned in your email that you are an author. What kind of writing have you done? I'm an author as well. My best known book is Edgar Cayce's Story of the Bible, available through Amazon.com and ARE Press. By the way, from my point of view, I feel anyone who has lived in Hopkinsville and is being called to do healing work has a special destiny with Edgar Cayce and his work. Blessings, and faint not, for you have been called. And that was enough to get me to shut down completely. And I was like, I'm done. I can't. Like, what does that mean? Has a special destiny with Edgar Cayce and his work. I mean, this guy knows his stuff, right? What am I supposed to do with this? So the person who sent me that email is named Robert Krajenke. And it is Edgar Cayce's Story of the Bible, written in 2012, which was a year before I had my initiation and awakening. So according to Edgar Cayce, the most documented psychic of our time, the Bible is a source book for spiritual development that applies to every facet of our lives, beginning with the story of Genesis and the creation of souls, and culminating with the promises of Jesus and the Revelation. You will discover the powerful plan that has been in place since the beginning, a plan set in motion to restore humanity's fallen consciousness to its true heritage as spiritual beings. And this was published by the Association of Research and Enlightenment Press, the ARE. So this man obviously knew what he was talking about. And that's what makes this even more disturbing to me. And disturbing because what is this special destiny with Edgar Cayce and his work? What does that actually mean? Now, blessings and faint not, for you have been called. Have you ever been called to a higher purpose? Have you ever been called to a higher spiritual purpose? Have you? I mean, I have. It's pretty damn overwhelming and terrifying. And I don't think I ever reached out back to him because I'm like, I don't even know what that means. You know, you just kind of shut down after stuff like that. And so I was grappling with some things and I was sharing them on my YouTube channel, and other people were kind of watching me. In the early days of my YouTube channel, it was really kind of fun and exciting as people were able to join in on what this joy, it felt like it was a birth celebration. It was like joyous. And I was understanding spiritual concepts. I was getting these revelations. And one lady put it like this. She said, you are getting spiritual revelation after revelation and it takes people years to understand. Like you're just being hit with them over and over and over again. And I was. And I wrote a lot of articles during that time. I made a lot of content during that time. But then I eventually my alcoholism and my addiction, which I think it's a necessary part of this. Okay. Like it's a necessary part because, you know, up until that point I had a DUI. Oh, I remember this email now that I got from somebody else. But it might've been him as well. The interesting thing is one of my friends who told me that Edgar Cayce was all CIA told me to delete everything in my inbox at one point. She said, just clean it all up, delete every email. And I did. So I don't have access to these emails anymore, but that I know about, he might have access to them. But anyway, but he said, you know, that I had a period of sobriety. I did. I got a DUI. I was sober for about 6 months. And then I relapsed. And he said something about it blowing your psychic centers open, like when you have a period of sobriety and then you go back to drinking. But I needed to go through that addiction. I had to go down, like all the way down to the very, very bottom. Because what's the main thing that needs healing at this phase? I mean, addiction is it. Addiction is the thing that I feel called to help people with. I feel really called to help people and heal their addictions. I really, really do. So that might tie into my destiny as well. I know that I can help anybody get sober. And the better I get at being able to help people get sober, the less my phone rings. Isn't that crazy? Like, that's the weird thing about being able to help people. Your phone doesn't ring all that much. For now. Thank you, spirits. For now. But so I had to go back to drinking. I had to go through all that because, to be honest, I hadn't really been through all that much. I have been through a lot, but, you know, I had to get put in a place where I would surrender to God. I had to get put into a place where I would surrender to God. And I did. And then I was in a mental institution for a year, and then I got out, and then I got sober. But I remember, you know, claiming my role as a shaman, and nothing got better until I claimed that role. You know, I asked AI something. because I was talking to Merrick about this, and I said, would Edgar Cayce have been known as a shaman, in America? And AI basically said, Edgar Cayce is remembered as the sleeping prophet, a man who could lay down, enter a trance, and give remarkably, I'll show this to you, remarkably detailed readings on health, spirituality, past lives in the Akashic records. In his time, he was seen as a medical clairvoyant and prophet. But if we look at his function rather than his label, Cayce operated in the same role shamans have served across cultures for thousands of years. So entering altered states of consciousness. I might do a whole episode on, was Edgar Cayce a shaman? Or I don't even know if I have to. But Cayce described accessing higher intelligences, the collective unconscious, and even beings beyond time and space. This mirrors the shaman's work with spirit allies, ancestors, and non-physical guides. And why he wasn't called a shaman. Cayce was born in the American South at a time when Christianity dominated cultural life. He read the Bible daily and considered his work an extension of his Christian faith. Had he called himself a shaman, his community likely would have rejected him outright. Instead, he was framed as a prophet, healer, and Christian mystic. This shows how labels are shaped by culture. In another setting, say among the ancient tribes of Siberia or the Americas, Cayce's role would have been instantly recognized as that of a shaman. And, I've grappled with calling myself a shaman. And to me, it just comes down to this. Like, I'm gay. I do gay shit. So I'm a gay man. I do shaman stuff. So I'm a shaman. Pretty much. I haven't found a better word to describe exactly what it is I do. If I come up with a better word, I will know. But I mean, I'm in the phase of my life where I just call things what they are. Here's a cup that looks like a ghost. These are glasses. I just say it. Sometimes people are looking for a shaman, and with me, that's what they're going to get. They're going to get shaman. Back in the early days of my old YouTube channel, people would come on and troll me, and they go, Patrick, you're not a shaman. Patrick, you're not a shaman. And it was kind of a joke. And I'd say, well, if I'm not a shaman, why am I doing shaman stuff? But I was never trained. Nobody taught me how to do this at all. And you can't learn this stuff in books. I mean, you can learn it in workshops and classes, but why would you take a class if you already know how to do it? I just know how to do it. Spirits trained me. Non-physical entities trained me. But at the same time, when I'm doing like shaman stuff for people, I get out of the way. I let these spirits take over. I let these higher intelligence take over. And I haven't had anybody really complain about it. People that I've really worked with, some of the things that I'm able to do shock even me. I'm continually delighted by the things that the spirits come up with. I am. Now, keep in mind, I'm a very skeptical person. I was very skeptical of this shit for the longest time. The longest time I was skeptical of it. And eventually it just got to the point where here's where I got with it. Here I am today doing what I'm doing. It is not easy to do go through what I'm going through right now, but this is what's happening. Okay? And the way I live my life today is dependent on the way I lived my life yesterday and the day before. And so I used to try to say that some of the things were all in my head or that they never really happened. But here I am today, and if those things never happened, then how am I here today talking about the things that happened if they never happened? So eventually I just gave up, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if people believe me. And actually, I don't even really think I did try to convince people either. I still don't try to convince people. You can believe me if you want. I mean, I've got receipts if you want to see them, but it's no big deal. It's no big deal. But I never took the Edgar Cayce connection all that seriously. It was like, okay, I don't know if I want a special destiny with Edgar Cayce and his work until I went to a support group at an occult bookstore. But before we get into that, I want to show you like where I grew up and where Edgar Cayce grew up. I want to show you on the map just how close that where we lived was very, very close. So here is a map of Hopkinsville, Christian County. And the Edgar Cayce farm is, I chose this approximately. This is where it is. Let me turn on satellite view because I like looking at the set. It's beautiful in this area of the world. It's just beautiful. So, you know, I just estimated that it was there. It could have been here. It could have been here. Could have been here. But there weren't addresses back then where he lived. It was just like a farm. And I can't tell you exactly where it was. So I just estimated it to be there. It could be here or it could be anywhere. Okay. Right around here. Memory lane. Seriously, spirits. Okay. So, if you go down this road here, and then you take a right, this is where I grew up. On this, wait, not there. Here. Man, I need to redo this. Take that out of my throat. That is where my dad's mistress lived. Okay, that's where my dad's mistress lived. That was a big scandal in our family because this was the land that we owned. I think our family was like, we owned a lot of land. I think it was all farmland. So, and there was a house here, and we rented it to a woman, and then my dad impregnated her. And so that was a big scandal in our family. Now here, when I'm telling you the truth about my connections with Edgar Cayce, unfortunately, I got to tell you the whole like things about me and my family that are not too flattering for them. This is another reason why they don't want me sharing stuff, because they got a lot of skeletons in the closet. And but see, nobody cares because every family has skeletons. It's just that I would have preferred to speak with them about this one-on-one instead of having to tell it on the internet, you see. But they don't want to talk about any of this. I interviewed my mother about this. She revealed some things, and that my grandmother played cards with the Cayce family. So, you know, there are some connections that my family had with the Cayce family, but it just seemed unimportant when it came to helping me decode this. It was just, oh, why would you want to know about this? Even my aunt knew the oldest living expert on Edgar Cayce's work, and I wanted to talk to him. And my aunt knew him and had his name and number. And because I was so interested in figuring this out, I was like, I want to talk to him. I have some questions to ask him. And she was like, why would you want to ask him questions? Because I don't know. Was my aunt also having an affair with my father? I don't know. They're all trying to cover shit up. It's crazy, alcoholic families. So yeah, I do have to talk about this stuff because it is important, that especially why my family doesn't want me asking questions, because I know things about them. But the thing is, nobody cares about them. They're an insulated, almost cult-like family, and outsiders get treated very poorly. It's almost like a cult. They're mean people. So anyway, this was the farm on which I was raised. And I loved living here. I loved it as a child, even though the house was haunted. You can't really see the house from here, but I remember walking this long ass driveway. Here was the barn back here. I spent a lot of time in this barn playing. There were the grain silos back there. And there were abandoned houses back here too. Now, I'm sure they're not standing anymore, but you know, abandoned because you know, houses from like the 1800s and and early 1900s. It was just, it's a different time, you know, and being raised in the 70s like this, it was very, I loved it. I loved it. Let's go to Street View and see here. This is what it looks like now. And, you know, this was where I grew up. This was my neighborhood. And, my cousins lived over here. These were my neighbors. All my cousins, we all lived around here, you know, all farmers, all raised around here. Sometimes I want to go back to that house because it was haunted. I experienced a lot of spiritual activity. But I used to dance for the corn spirits quite a bit in this area. And there were lots of paranormal things that happened. And the pain of loss, you know, alcoholism destroys families. You know, we had to move here. We had to move away from here because of my father's infidelity, especially with this woman over here. And we really never stopped moving because of that situation with the woman, because my father kept trying to escape having to pay child support. So in many ways, I think moving us away was about trying to preserve his image as an adulterer, alcoholic, abusive adulterer. And as a shaman today, that's why I don't tolerate abuse or lying or manipulating or gaslighting or any of that shit, because it did destroy our family. I have no doubt that had my father gotten treatment for his alcoholism and been able to go through a 12-step program and get treatment, we would still be living in that house. But then again, I wouldn't be here where I was. So let me just fantasize just a little bit about what it would have been like to live in the same house, in the same farmhouse, out in the country. Pretty much unaware of the big wide world around us. And, you know, let's look at Beverly now. Let's zoom out and look at Beverly for a little bit. Let's just go and see. So I did the numbers, and Beverly, it's about 4.5 miles from my house to where Edgar Cayce was. 4.5, 5 miles. And so let's see if we can get a street view here. Well, I don't know whose house that is, but here we are on Memory Lane. I swear to God, spirits, you are crazy, crazy. And, you know, let's just drive through and see what it's like. We're going down Memory Lane, y'all. We're just going down Memory Lane. So as you can see, there's not much here except for some families and stuff like that. Here, like right around here is where the birthplace of the New Age movement is, pretty much. Like, this is the area where it started. There's no monuments here. There's no visitor center or welcome center like there is in Sedona. Maybe someday there might be. I don't know, but this is it. Little houses and country roads. And so there you have it. There you have it. So now I'm going to go back to what happened to me at the occult bookstore in Chicago. With my children's flashcards in hand, this was my divination tool. It was my divination deck. And I gave so many readings from that original deck. I don't have it anymore. I lost it when I got put into the mental institution, but man, it surely was something special. It really, really was. and people were amazed. Like I was able to give readings from these children's flashcards. And so like Edgar Cayce, I was just giving readings. Nobody taught me. I was just doing it. And so I was also desperate for money at the time too. I was really desperate. You know, I was in Chicago. I obviously couldn't work with this shit going on in my head, this shamanic initiation, all that shit going on. And so I eventually, you know, would walk down the street, go to bars and stuff and give readings. And I was walking down the street and I saw this office, or I can't, it's like an office. I've got a picture of it. I'll throw a pic. And I went in there and I said, would you guys like some readings? And they did. And they go, how much? And I go, $20. They're like, oh yeah, let's have a reading. So I was giving them readings. And as I was leaving, this girl was walking down the street and she goes, oh, you do psychic readings? I go, yeah. And she goes, oh, so have you been down to the occult bookstore downtown? And not downtown, but close to downtown. And they have a support group there on such and such night. I can't really remember the night. I think it was Wednesdays. And I go, oh, a support group for people like me? Yes. And let me see if I can find the address for this occult bookstore. Here it is right here. I was so excited to go to this occult bookstore. I really, really was, because I felt like I was gonna find my people. The interesting thing was I was sharing this with people on, you know, YouTube, and I was talking about, you know, going to this occult bookstore, and there it is. That's exactly what it looked like. And they had a back room where they had little meetings in this back room. And I think that's Alchemy Arts. They didn't like me at Alchemy Arts very much at all. There it is, Alchemy Arts. They didn't like me. I actually went to Alchemy Arts too, and I showed them this children's flashcard deck. They were just completely, they thought I was insane, crazy person. They just didn't get what I was doing at all. Also, I think that there's a big satanic element in that one as well. I never got the satanic stuff at this one though. These people seemed like genuine occult people, and especially at that support group. So when I went into that support group, it was just, it was witches and fairies and other mystical, spiritual people, you know, people who've had an awakening, and, you know, it was like a support group. I can't tell you, like it's hard to find your people in this regard. And I didn't know that there was this whole other world, underneath ours. I didn't know that this went on. And so, you know, we went around the room and we were supposed to introduce ourselves, where we're from. And when it got to me, I said, well, I'm from Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And somebody said, oh, that's Edgar Cayce's town. And then another person said, that's where the alien invasion happened. And another person said, and the Bell Witch is close to there too. And then I was like, and so immediately I kind of had a little bit of street cred with these people. It was weird. They seemed to know more about Hopkinsville and the legacy of what happened in Hopkinsville than I did. And then I showed them my divination deck, and the lady leading it, she was like, oh, that's a wonderful deck. And I went to that meeting for a few weeks. I became friends with some people, and then there was some drama with one of them, which I'm not going to get into here. There's some drama with people. He was really paranoid. Like, he had to build a Merkaba. Like, you also get some crazy people in that shit too, because a spiritual awakening will make you a lot of bit crazy. And there was also a lot of drinking involved with that drama as well. There was also a lot of drama around me at that time too. I mean, I was hanging out with drug addicts and alcoholics, and you know, sometimes drug addicts and alcoholics don't want other people knowing that they're drug addicts and alcoholics. And you know what? I got sober. I'm going to wish all those people well. I really am going to wish all those people well. So, I started to like really understand that it was more than just a weird coincidence that I was born in Louisville. Wait a minute. This is something that's weird. I was not born in Hopkinsville. And I kind of downplayed that. Like, well, I really am not all that connected to Edgar Cayce because I was actually born in Louisville. And then I was adopted into this family in Hopkinsville. Wait a minute. So you mean I was born in a whole other place unrelated to Edgar Cayce, but I found my way to the place where Edgar Cayce was born and raised. So that's weird. So is there a connection with Edgar Cayce in Louisville? Yeah, there is. Edgar Cayce lived in Louisville from August 1898 to late 1899 when he worked for J.P. Morton and Company before moving back to Hopkinsville. Although he's only spent a year in Louisville, his formative years in the surrounding Kentucky area and his later fame are closely tied to that region. You can learn more about him in his hometown. Okay. What was J.P. Morton and Company? Cayce returned to Hopkinsville for Christmas and decided to remain there, ending his time in Louisville. Well, this is important for me to bring up here because while I was in Chicago having my awakening and I had no intention of ever coming back to Hopkinsville. I had no intention of it. But I heard my mother was sick. And so my then boyfriend and I decided to go visit Hopkinsville and see my mom. While we were here visiting, we decided to get married. We moved back to Chicago we went back to Chicago. And while we were in Chicago, Merrick said, I want to live in Hopkinsville. I want to live in the country. And I said, okay. And so something similar happened to us as what happened to me as well. What was J.P. Morton and Company? So as you can see, I didn't ever intend to come back here. I didn't intend to ever move back home. I don't know what J.P. Morton and Company did because I don't know what that was because nothing's coming up except this singer. Oh, an importer. Okay. They were an importer. And I don't know what they imported. I'm not going to focus too much on that about this. So with all that I've just told you, I'm breaking the seal on this. So I told you all the weird connections and the weird coincidences. I haven't told you everything. Not right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use AI to help me see what could be up. I probably could reach out to Robert Krajenski again, but I don't have his email address. But I think this would be a fun thing for us to do, or maybe not. It kind of terrifies me. To be quite honest, it terrifies me. There's some things that maybe I just don't want to know about my soul mission. But with that said, I did ask AI what would be, and I put some of these things into AI. I didn't say it was me. I just said hypothetically, what could it mean if someone, let me just do the presentation. If someone grew up in Edgar Cayce's hometown of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and even on farmland close to where Cayce himself was raised, and then had a psychic awakening similar to his, there are several deep commonalities and resonance they might share with him. So I didn't say me because I wanted to remove, AI can be kind of criticized for being biased and telling you what you want to hear. And so I'm asking for a friend, essentially. And Edgar Cayce now that I know about what shamanic initiation, shamanic awakenings are like, our awakenings were kind of similar from what I know. Mine was exacerbated due to family trauma, addiction, being in Chicago, which is a crazy place to have a spiritual awakening. I wish I had it here. No, I don't. I don't wish I had it here. But I do want to explore this in a sort of measured way and really try to understand exactly what it means. Geographical and energetic resonance. Land holds memory. Cayce often emphasized how places can carry energetic imprints. Growing up on soil tilled by the same sun, rain, and rhythms that shaped Cayce's early life would naturally create a resonance. The farmland itself, quiet, expansive, and deeply tied to nature, acts as fertile ground for intuition. You're walking the same earth, breathing the same country air, and absorbing the same sense of rural simplicity that incubated Cayce's gifts. And there's a resistance in me about this, because I've had people just project onto me for so much of this, and so this is difficult for me to talk about because I can already hear people trying to downplay the significance of these connections. So I'm just going to ignore them. I've asked Merrick 100 times, I'm like, is this a big deal? Is this worth talking about? And he's like, yes, absolutely. And I have to go back to this email from this expert. Do you see how much my parents fucking screwed me up so that I can't even get this shit? Because one of my triggers is not being believed, and I think it's funny that the spirit set this up for me. I feel anybody who has lived in Hopkinsville and is being called to do healing work has a special destiny with Edgar Cayce and his work. Blessings and faint not, for you have been called. All right. Do you see how much how I've grappled with this? It's not been something easy for me. And I do feel like something is getting unblocked and unlocked for me. I really, really do. So let's go on to the next one. Cayce's upbringing was steeped in a mixture of Christian devotion, rural humility, and openness to mystical possibility. Someone raised in that same environment, particularly on a farm, would likely inherit that same blend of hard work, reverence for nature, and deep-rooted faith. Even if you've branched into broader spiritual practices, those early cultural imprints shape the way psychic experiences express themselves, often with sincerity, compassion, and a service-oriented approach. And I would say that it did. I was raised Christian. There was some humility in it. And also, due to all the supernatural things that happened to me as a child, there is that openness to mystical possibility. And so there we go. That's just another connection. These are all hypothetical, by the way. Cayce's psychic awakening wasn't flashy. It unfolded through dreams, altered states, and a willingness to surrender himself as a channel. A person near his hometown with a similar awakening might find it arrives in the same humble, unforced way. Instead of striving for powers, it comes through trust, prayer, or quiet contemplation. The awakening might carry that same reluctant mystic energy. The gift comes not as ego inflation, but as a responsibility. And that is how I feel, like kind of reluctant. I've always been very reluctant about this. My awakening, however, was flashy, but there was a point, and I'm saying flashy because I'm gay. I have an entertainment background. I have a flair. I'm a storyteller, an actor, a performer, all those things. So when I'm talking about stuff, there's a little bit of razzle dazzle. And my awakening was pretty flashy. It was. But it did also unfold through dreams, altered states. And I did have to surrender myself at some point to what was happening. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. And in fact, many times I tried to not do it, and it didn't turn out too well for me. And, you know, there, in doing this kind of stuff, I do want to tell you, there's almost a sense, and I know people might not really understand this, but like almost forced to do it in a way, you know, kind of, in all other avenues get closed off for you, you know? And maybe being forced to do it is the wrong way to put it. It almost becomes to the point, well, what else can you do except this? I mean, the spirits made it so that pretty much the only thing I can do is what I'm doing. Because I would much rather be a stand-up comedian, filmmaker. But when you're called by spirit in this way, you do it because you know that you have to. You're called to it. People have said, Patrick, how could you talk for hours and hours and hours? Like, well, how can I not? How can I not? It feels good to channel this spiritual energy. It feels good to help people. I mean, if you knew that you could help people just by talking to them, wouldn't you? And it is a reluctant thing. It is. So the rural mystic, Cayce embodied a unique archetype, the farm boy who tapped into the infinite. Someone with nearly the same background and a psychic blossoming would echo this archetype. There's a certain balance here, grounding in sweat, soil, and livestock on one hand, and ungrounded visions of healing and prophecy on the other. That tension creates authenticity. It keeps psychic insight rooted rather than drifting into pure abstraction. And as you've noticed in my work lately, it's been about less of the woo-woo love and light into grounded spirituality, like grounded, like give me something I can do. Okay. Let me know how I can actually be helped by stuff. Let me know what exactly what I need to do. Because you can talk about the crystals and the vibrations and all of that stuff. You can do all that stuff. But my work has become ever more about calming people down, helping people grapple with some of the revelations that you have. You know, our book, The Machinations of Ego, right here. This is one of those things. Didn't necessarily want to write this book, but had to, because we knew it was going to help people. And probably this is probably the most upfront spiritual book that we could possibly write. Yeah, I favor a direct approach rather than an abstract approach, even more. Plus, I'm also in my 50s. Like, I'm like, let's just cut the shit and get right down to it. So if we lean into Cayce's own teachings on reincarnation and soul groups, there's another layer. Being born and raised so near his life path might not be random. It could suggest you're part of the same karmic soul group or are carrying forward some piece of the same mission. Psychic awakening in that exact place may be your spirit responding to the same call he answered. Service to humanity through spiritual awareness. And that's the shit that's kind of overwhelming. But why did it happen to me and not my sisters? I can't say that it didn't. Both of my sisters grapple with addiction, so I can't really say that it didn't. I had that period of sobriety. All right. So maybe the conditions of it had to be that way. Like, I was raised on that farm, and then I lived in Nashville, and then I got a DUI, so I had to get sober, and then I had that period of sobriety. My sisters did not have that period of sobriety. So it could have easily have been my sisters or anybody else in Hopkinsville who had that similar path, having the conditions just right for that awakening. I don't know, and I'm not going to say that there was addiction in Edgar Cayce's family. I'm not saying that. But I also know that there was trauma in his life due to watching somebody die that he loved. So but it's being raised around those same energies. Maybe here's what I know, that I know why the spirits woke me up, because I was suffering so much. I was not being supported by my family at all. And in fact, my family was trying to shut me up to preserve their perfect family image. And I know that if I had not gotten sober, and if I hadn't had help from all these spirit guides, I would be dead. Most scapegoated kids die. So you don't normally hear from people like me, because most of us die due to addictions or accident, or just the sad hopelessness of being sabotaged by people who are supposed to support you. So I should, if it hadn't been for spirits and God, I'd be dead. I'd be dead. And I know that my family downplayed all of this because they didn't want that getting out. So what? You're a dysfunctional family, like every other family, like every other family where there's drinking and all this stuff. And that's a lot of families right now, a lot of them. But I am called to service through humanity, through spiritual awareness. It's what gets me up in the morning. It's what gets me up in the morning, for real. So in short, a person from Cayce's hometown, raised as he was with a parallel awakening, would likely share his grounded mysticism, his humility, his connection to the land, and possibly even his karmic mission. You'd be carrying the same frequency of place, but with your own modern expression of the work. And so I'm gonna look this up and see, these are things that I would have asked. These are things that I would have asked an expert on Edgar Cayce. So now let's end this episode today by talking about what Edgar Cayce's mission actually was. Was to help humanity understand and apply universal spiritual laws for individual and collective betterment, focusing on health, self-discovery, and spiritual growth by providing channeled guidance on physical, mental, and spiritual interconnectedness. His work involved accessing a universal consciousness to offer practical advice on holistic health, the power of the mind, and finding purpose. Holistic health, spiritual and universal laws. This is what I do. Individual growth. Yeah. Purpose and self-discovery. Yeah. Practical guidance by accessing a universal consciousness in a trance-like state. Cayce channeled insights and advice on a vast array of topics, including personal matters, past lives, and philosophical concepts, documenting them as readings. His readings, which combined concepts from Theosophy, New Thought, and Protestant theology, became foundational text for the New Age movement. And so, there you have it. Those are my connections to Edgar Cayce. So, what do you think? What do you make of all of this? Does it even matter? For me, it might just be the evidence that what I'm going through actually is real. Maybe it's just that. But man, there must be something more, right? There must be something more that I'm missing, because it's just too weird, isn't it? Like, why? Why? All right. That's all I have for you today. If you have any comments or insights, or if you know more about Edgar Cayce, as I said, I haven't researched it much at all. And also, you know, my family kind of didn't want me to succeed because they didn't want this stuff to get out, but it got out anyway. So there you go. All right. I want you to have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your support. And don't forget, if you want to get a copy of our book, The Machinations of Ego, if you're ready to break free from drama, self-sabotage, and performative spirituality, this book will change your life. Also, don't forget, we have our Oracle deck, The Ender of Minds, a Lovecraftian tool to break the spell of thought. It's a deluxe hardcover guidebook with lore-rich entries, terrifying insights, and direct spiritual lessons. You will love this Oracle deck. It is coming soon to Kickstarter. Thank you so much. I want you to have a lovely day. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Through the river and the trees, I came to be, I came to be. On the river and the roads, I learned to grow, I learned to grow. I've seen the streets of LA, I don't know if they look better today. I've seen the sights in Peru, came home a little different, I guess I grew. But the real growth happens in the heart, not what we see, like my mama told me. Real growth is more than saying you'll start, it's not your castles like my father believed. But then, I was able to see. Through the river and the trees, I came to be, I came to be. On the river and the roads, I learned to grow, I learned to grow. Through the struggles and the pain, I only gained, I only gained. When others yelled and screamed, I came to be, I came to be. I went down to the river to get a drink. People looked at me like I was insane, crazy. You can't drink that water, they said. Why don't you drink this wine with us instead? I turned around to see a chaotic scene, people grimacing as if in a dark, dark dream, hiding knives behind their backs so no one else could see. I tried to point it out, they told me I was being mean. It didn't matter to tell them they were mad. They scoffed at me and said I didn't understand. As they sharpened their blades, hate in their face, I turned to the trees and ran away. Through the river and the trees, I came to be, I came to be. On the river and the roads, I learned to grow, I learned to grow. Through the struggles and the pain, I only gained, I only gained. When others yelled and screamed, I came to be, I from the pain. I only gained. When others yelled and screamed, I came to be.